Hi, and welcome back to Gavin's Sonex B. Happy New Year to everybody. It's January, mid-January now. I think it's the 11th or 12th today, I can't remember. And I've been able to get a few hours here and there over Christmas and the New Year, doing little bits and pieces, mainly concentrating on the wiring in the tail cone. And it's taken me a few hours to construct the looms. Those of you who've watched the other videos will know that I'm splitting the wiring into two sections. There's the aft section which lives inside the tail cone where most of the equipment is, and well, at least the radios and transponders and flight instruments or sensors are located. And then there's the forward part, which is in the cockpit, and there are connectors that join the two sections together, so I can completely wire the tail cone, and the wiring in the cockpit forwards is completely separate. So what have I been doing? I've been using my new cutters, strippers and crimper tools, a hot air gun, lots of wire and heat shrink tubing, little bit of solder, but mainly crimping, and as you remember, all the wiring is Tefcel aircraft wire for safety, so it doesn't catch fire and produce lots of noxious fumes if anything goes wrong. So I've got I've made three of the sections of the tail cone loom. It basically breaks down into four parts. There's the connector that provides the power and control of the flaps, the electric flaps. There's a connector for the MGL flight instrument bus, which also provides power for the flight sensors, the AHRS and electric compass. And then there is the transponder connector and the radio transceiver connector as well. So I've made each of these up separately for the tail cone. So if I just turn you round, I'll show you what I've done. I don't know whether I can get far enough away from it actually. Here we go. So here we have the one for the transceiver. So we've got two sets of headphone microphone sockets, and then it runs off all the way around to the radio connector itself, and then there's a separate cable that comes out, which is the one that runs to the connector at the bulkhead behind the seats in the tail cone, and that's the one that we connect into to bring the all the wires forward. And then this is the one for the transponder. Similar kind of idea. There's the connector for the actual transponder itself, and then we've got a cable that runs to the connector, which is going on the bulkhead between the tail cone and cockpit, forward fuselage. The third one is already in the aircraft, and I'll show you that in a minute. That's the one for the communications to the AHRS and the electronic compass. And these are the tools I've been using. So from the right, this is the extremely expensive crimper, which if you're very lucky, I'll give you a demonstration of how that works. The wire strippers, pair of side cutters, a Stanley knife blade, and this is a pin extractor tool for the type of connectors that I'm using, the D-type crimp connectors. I've got all my connectors in this box, various different sizes, sockets, plugs, there's pins and mounting hardware and all sorts of bits and pieces in there. Then I've got a kit of various sizes of heat shrink tube that I've been using as well, and obviously my trusty multimeter, which I use to check the connections pin to pin after they're made. Obviously got a lot of wire there, mostly singles of 2 different gauges, and then there's some screen twisted pair for the headphones and microphone connections there to the radio. This is a heat shrink gun. It's basically a very powerful hairdryer. Don't want to put your hand in front of it, it gets very, very hot. So that's what I've been doing for the last, well, I've been picking the odd day here and there for the last week or so. Lots of working out connections. For instance, here we've got the radio harness pin-to-pin connections for what's going on there. And so what we'll do now is we'll adjourn out to the garage and have a look at where all this is going to be going. So here we are out in the garage. I'll just swing you around a second. And so we're looking into the tail cone. You can see the AHRS artificial horizon sensor on the right there, which is on the left hand side of the aircraft, because obviously we're looking backwards. And the compass is on the left as we look at it, the right hand side of the aircraft, and you can see the wiring harness. The connector is in the back of the unit, it's running across here and then runs into the back of the second one and then across through this useful hole that was already in there with a grommet, and is going to run across and eventually end up down here. I haven't finished it off yet because I've got to decide where all the cables are going to go, and I want them all in there at the same time, so if there's any common, if they're running in a common direction, I can fix them all down together, so make it as neat as possible. I've got the radio and transponder out at the moment. There they are, these are both trig units. There's a TY91, which is the transceiver, and TT21, is it? Yeah, TT21 transponder next to it. And as those of you who've been watching will know, these I've got clip on underneath, if I can do it. There we go, and they fix in with a nice little clip. And the same for the radio, pops in there like that and then clips on like that, and they both sit under there. So now my next task is to take these leads I prepared earlier and work out how I'm going to route them from the radio and transponder to the sockets. to the sockets which are there. And the wires you can see sticking out there are the power and feedback for the flap system. So they come from up on the actuator, tie wrap down the side of the actuator, and then are going to run across to the socket there. So that's what I've been up to for the last week or so since New Year. Not much else to report. Been looking into a few bits and pieces. The plan I have at the moment is to basically get the tail cone finished off. In terms of it's all wired, everything I need to do to it is done. And then rejoin the forward fuselage onto it. The next thing I'm going to do is set the elevator control end, drill that and bolt that, but obviously you've got to have the two halves together. It's going to join onto that bit there, so that when we move the control stick, it raises and lowers the elevator. And once that's done, I'm going to concentrate on finishing off the cockpit and getting that all sorted as much as possible. So that's what I'm up to at the moment. As I said before, Happy New Year, and hope all your projects are all progressing as well as mine is at the moment. I seem to be making a reasonable amount of progress. Still want to try and get this in the air for the summer, so time is of the essence now. Got to push forward. Going to be talking to the president of the Aero Club this evening at the monthly Aero Club meeting with regard to moving this over to the hangar and work out where it's going to go. It's in a state now where it has all three wheels attached. It can be moved, and so I can carry on. Started to think about the engine. Got to get on and start construction of that. Don't anticipate that being too much of an issue, but you never know. Anyway, that's all I've got for you for today. Hopefully start doing these videos on a regular basis, at least every week or so, just to let you know what I'm up to. See you later.